Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. Thank you for joining us. Can we just start? Do we have any apologies for absence, James?
Yeah, got apologies from Neil Cameron. We are expecting both Councillor Kite and Councillor Vernon to join us.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Any declarations of interest other than the standard standing declarations of interest relating to notes planning committee? No, right, great. Then we have our part one minutes, which have been circulated. Any comments on those, or do they reflect what took place in the meeting? An accurate reflection of the meeting?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so those are approved. Ian, are there any actions you'd like to draw our attention to?
There are two marked as open. I think one of them, the first one, 2302, we've got on our business plan. People regarding disclosed, I think the
Right.
draft has been sent to the ministry. They understand the position and agree that once the final allocation to FY26 is confirmed, then they are putting through the process for approval. I think the rest with the SRO, and then the other one is still work in progress.
Right.
Great regarding the responsibilities. Landowners along Route Ebbsfleet.
Right, thank you very much for that. Well, look, why don't we move on to the first substantive paper, Chief Executive's Part 1 update. Yeah.
Thank you. And I've got a number of other papers here following my Part 1 report. And only thing I really wanted to highlight on the Part 1 report is the paragraph 3, section 3, where a note that the corporation was 10 years old. Last week, in fact, we had a little celebration here with staff during the All Staff Day, and we felt it was appropriate to mark the occasion and recognise the success that's been over this period of time. And as I've noted in the paragraph 3.1, that those achievements are being recognised by others as well from central government who visited recently and seen the progress that's been made.
Right, well, happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to us. There is still a lot more to do, of course, at 3.2. In fact, that in terms of the number of housing completions, about a third of the way through, but the corporation is very well placed to carry on with the work and is now a mature delivery organisation. So I would also just note my thanks to Councillor Derek Murphy, who's left the board at the county elections. Derek was a very supportive board member on a number of issues that we were dealing with the council, and so yeah, particularly wanted to my thanks to Derek for that support.
Absolutely. So it's in respect of Kent County Council, we're probably waiting for them to decide on leadership within now the administration, the reform administration, and then what is the mechanic for reaching out to them about who their appointee will be? What have we got plans for doing that?
We will do that. I think in the past what's happened is that the council have written direct to the ministry, haven't they?
Yeah, they nominate somebody, so that's what we're waiting for.
But we'll get in touch.
I won't get in touch because
they may not be familiar with that.
Yeah, they're pretty new to all of it, I think, so they may not know that process. So it might be best for us to reach out to them to say they need to do that.
Yeah, I think
there'll be a leader's office, so
we'll
continuity there.
We'll keep an eye on when a leader is identified.
All right, great. All right, board. Is that it?
It is on that paper.
Yeah. Any comments on that, board? No, that is just for noting. Thank you very much indeed.
But the next paper from me is the corporate plan review. So there's a short covering paper, just reminding the board of the process that we're in to produce a new paper, a new corporate plan. The main purpose of this is the review of progress made in that the last plan period, so 21 to 25, and some of the lessons learned over the last formulas, which we have adapted to and reflected in a new plan going forward. I think I would probably, there's lots of highlights in terms of the performance over that period. I would just highlight the one about the actual number of housing completions. That felt like a really punchy target at the time, and I remember discussions at the board in the first year or two of the corporate plan where the numbers, and it was probably sort of the COVID period where the numbers were down, when it looked like as a result of those slightly lower numbers in the early part of the plan period, to catch up to 5,000 was going to need some acceleration, and actually to be within a whisker of 5,000 at 31st of March 25, I think is actually belies the achievement, particularly within those challenging years during the COVID period. In terms of lessons learned, just to highlight a couple, and the first one is the impact of the spending review funding cycles, and certainly during the COVID period where we had very short-term settlements, understandably so, that plays a really significant part in terms of delivering capital programs and doing that efficiently. So that's definitely had an impact. It's one of the lessons that we do communicate from here to the ministry, and being able to raise some of these matters with the new towns task force that are looking at how to deliver the new towns. And certainly the certainty and longevity of funding settlement is a big lesson, I think, additionally for new towns substantially.
See you, Jeremy.
Hello, sorry.
We are. Yes, traffic was quite sticky.
The second one is the third on that list is about the provision of social and community facilities, and the challenge that exists in keeping those in step with the growth, particularly as we've noted that the growth in the area has been probably one of the fastest in the country. So it is a major challenge for organisations such as us and local authorities as well that are involved in delivering new settlements. The challenge of the social and community facilities we face with that, and that's a big lesson I think over our last 5 years has actually really ramped up. A couple of final things. We always felt that there was huge employment opportunities that could come out of Ebbsfleet, and you'll remember that partway through this period we adopted an inclusive growth approach, and it was really the introduction of a dedicated staff resource to drive that forward that really made the difference. And so I think that's been a real positive for our work with new and existing communities, and we're really seeing a benefit of that and how it's changing the lives of people, having a really positive impact. But it's that the lesson there is the need to have a dedicated resource to be able to drive it forward. And then legacy, final thing here, which again I think we perhaps underestimate the progress that we've made by establishing the trust, that trust gaining maturity and gaining confidence, and now really beginning to deliver and find its sort of future role emerging with some of the facilities that are coming forward. And I think this is something that we're asked an awful lot about as we talk to other places that are planning for new settlements, and the need to really plan legacy legacy arrangements right from the outset. So I think a number of really important lessons here, which we do try to communicate to other places. Very keen for them to learn about some of the good things and the challenges that we faced here. So I'll stop there, Simon. There's obviously lots of material there on all of the achievements against the ambitions that were set out in the plan.
Great, right. Yes, comment, Simon.
So Ian, really useful papers. Thank you for drafting. So two questions. One, and they are related. Where will this see the light of day? So is this something that's going to be published on our website? Is this something that we're going to do communications about? Or is it just really for sort of politicians in MHCLG and others to review? And then related to that, in terms of the lessons learned and reflections, depending on the audience is, it might be helpful then to, against each of those, say how we're taking that lesson learned into the next corporate plan to make sure there's an appropriate bridge between the 21-25 plan and the 25-30 plan. And so that we can see how those would be reflected on and acted on in terms of the next steps in the organisation.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, on the first point, I think, yes, I would see us publishing something from this. It may not necessarily be this full document, but we'll have a look at make something suitable and publish that. This is a part one paper, so it's in the public domain already. So we might jazz it up a little bit. Something. Well, we will definitely publish something. It's a good point on my lessons learned. Some of them, for example, the one I mentioned about the funding certainty, we probably don't be talking about the BSR side, but the way that we've had to adapt to that.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think it's something we can have a narrative around, and we deal with those things in terms of different weeks. So that's that would be a beneficial thing to do. Yeah, we'll take that.
Right, good point, Simon. Yes, Valerie.
I probably would know the answer to this in resolution, but housing diversification, I understand this plan permissions already in place. But what have we done or are doing about this? Actually, central, because we control of that. It's a great way to really deliver more mixed and balanced waters. And so I truly can't remember what's happening.
Well, so at the moment we're not at the point where we're taking plots to the market and having to make decisions about the type of tenure of the residential. What we have talked about, the outline planning application allow for 35% affordable. But in our analysis, we are also assuming a fair proportion of built to rent, and many of the other elements around the health and well-being. For example, we're talking about we in conversations with health partners around which key worker housing, specialist housing. So the opportunities are there, as you say, Valerie. We've always said that that's where the real opportunity exists, central to greater diversification. We just haven't quite reached a period where we're having to make those sort of specific choices at the moment, but we will be having to do that in the next few years, the next couple of years.
It's difficult because we do obviously balance viability, particularly the way the planning applications come forward. There's flex, isn't there?
Yes.
Each of the in terms of square meters. So it's one somehow we need to hold on to it as an aspiration and make sure that if it is viable and where possible, we can translate it to reality.
Yeah, and we have to provide a sort of housing diversification strategy as part of the planning application conditions. So we've got all the hooks there, and then it's incumbent on us through our disposal strategy to make sure that we maximise those opportunities, whilst, as you rightly say, balancing all the other ambitions as well. But yeah, there is a real opportunity there to do something a bit different.
Okay.
Nick, with your rather splendid helicopter picture behind you.
I'm at the Royal Aeronautical Society. I put a question in the chat. Ian, can you say how you're working with the Thames Estuary Growth Team?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not in the meeting, Nick, so I haven't seen your question in the chat. On a number of accounts, more recently, and specifically, we've been discussing proposals for them to assist us further with investment activity. So the Thames Estuary Growth Board have now got, well, and have had for a year or more, dedicated resource working on inward investment across the Thames Estuary. We've had many discussions and had got a bit of support from their team. At the moment, we're in discussions about how we formalise that going forward. So that's one very specific example of how we're working with the Thames Estuary Growth Board.
And that's purely an inward investment or sort of quango. Does it have a capital budget at all?
No, I don't think it does. It's one of the, I think they were described as sub-regional partnerships, which had been funded around the country through various means from central government. The government withdrew funding for the Thames Estuary Growth Board in March. And I don't know the details, Nick, but they are now raising other funding from partners and other organisations to be able to carry on. I think.
Yes, I serve on it. It was always intended to be an ambassadorial kind of get out there and champion the region job. They've got a very dynamic leader. She's amazing and very committed. And I think that's probably worth its weight in gold to have that individual. But of course, a lot of it depends on whether the government are listening at the other end. And I think we're always concerned with a change of any government, whether they're going to be receptive to things that were set up before. So I think that's the challenge. But they're a very good team of people. And they're working at the cutting edge of things. They're looking at hydrogen investment and they're looking at bringing in different ways of making the area sing. They don't seem to be duplicating anything, which was my worry at the beginning. And they don't seem to be just housing led, although they've got obviously a big motivation there. But they're a good organisation and I hope they can carry on doing what they do.
It's true.
I knew you asked me that. Kate Millard. I would say Kate. I would say Kate Winston. It's not Kate. It's Kate Millard. Yeah.
I support you, so I work with them in the Centre of Engineering and Manufacturing Excellence. They do great work in the hydrogen corridor and the skills that we need for green energy, green tech and so on.
Yeah.
But they're no longer in receipt of central government.
No.
So they have to do their own fundraising to do that. So, right. Okay. Wishing all the best with that. All right. Any other comments on this? Just to say, look, I think that the performance has been very good, I think, frankly, over a 4-year period, about 2,500 housing completions, touching distance of 5,000. Mark will tell us later how close we are to that. And 31.5% affordable within that as well, which is, admirable. And I think in the case of community infrastructure, a number of initiatives which are actually, coming out of the ground there as well. School places, the Aberdeen Education Hub. Fantastic progress on that. Additional central government funding to make that happen. So that's essential for the mission. So I think good performance. So well done to the whole team for that. Let's go and do it again in the next plan period. Good. So that is for noting. Thank you very much, everyone. Ian, you're on a roll with the next one, aren't you?
Yeah. So the next paper is a review of performance against the annual business plan for 24-25. So we're at that time of the year again where we're setting that out. As board will know, you see quarterly updates, so you're aware of the progress that we've been reporting. Just to highlight in section 2.3, some of the significant achievements that have been made this year against the key actions. Includes the business cases that have been approved, particularly the outline business case for the first phase of Ebbsfleet Central, which is by far and away the biggest case. I think the answer is 609. The question is how many pages was the ABC at Ebbsfleet Central? So, and we received extremely good feedback from the Ministry of Public Policy on that. So that's a real progress point. I think, as you say, Simon, the construction commencing and progressing well at Ebbsfleet Green Community Buildings is a real fillet for the community and us as well, having intervened there and worked very hard on the agreements and working with our partner there, Barrett Redrow, and the trust to see those buildings coming out of the ground and going to be used by the community very soon. That's a really positive thing. We always highlight that a few areas where we haven't quite met the key actions we posed. The strategic outline case for the health and wellbeing hub is taking longer. It actually is, and I keep saying to Jen, look, this is a really complicated project. If it takes a few more weeks, it's time well spent because it is complex with the partners that we're dealing with. So, and all will be familiar with the situation that is emerged over the year on Springhead Bridge, which we've been dealing with. But we are making real progress on that now. And the principal inspection and the minor works have all been taken. They have now actually been signed off by the council. So this is one other outstanding matter which the board are aware of, and we're addressing that at the moment. So hopefully we'll see adoption of that soon. In terms of the KPIs, we did exceed the housing completions target for 648 completions in total, and we also met the affordable homes target for the year. Nearly £180 million private sector investment, which exceeded the target of 150. But again, at 3.4, we just noted a couple of the KPIs which we didn't quite make. They were missed by quite small margins overall. So I think if you look at the overall performance, there's 23 out of the 28 key actions, 82% were achieved, and 8 of the 11 KPI targets. Also worth noticing that it isn't just about those physical things, but the resident satisfaction survey produced really strong responses in terms of their satisfaction with the people are expressing with their neighbourhood, how they feel about the growing sense of community here. So I think it is about the physical, but absolutely that doesn't count for much if people don't like living here, and there isn't a good community cohesion and people feel that strong sense of community. So we are particularly proud of the fact that that's positive, as well as the all physical things that are happening. You've got lots of detail again in the document about that, even some of the plans with the footpaths and the parks that have been measured and included in the KPIs. I'll rest there if I can.
Right, board. Very encouraging picture. Any comments or observations?
I think I want to say, it's very evidence, it's strong progress that's been made, but also, some of the challenges we continue to face. It's all a balance report, and again, we've got a firm base from which to move forward and traditionally, well done.
Absolutely. Thank you. Right.
Well, can I just finish it?
Yes.
I've always said I'm a bear of little brain. I'm surrounded on this board by people with lots of qualifications and letters after their names and achievements. And for me, it was always the community that was going to be key to this. And it was a two-track thing. It was first of all, to say how important the community was, and secondly, to remind people that actually it was a relatively small part of a much bigger community. And so we couldn't lose our heads over it, to continually set up a system that required lots of onward investment, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We had to accept that it was going to be a place, and that was it. And I think I'm really, really chuffed with the way it's come out. I think we had a couple of false starts, which were down to, frankly, the board not knowing quite what it wanted to do. But then I think with the team that we have here, they've absolutely really made those things sing. The community board, I think, is working brilliantly. And it's not, you know, and I think the balance to such extent that I was able to just walk away and say, I'm sure it's absolutely fine. And I think one of the big selling points, I'm not saying this just to be provocative, but one of the big important points is that as a local elected council leader, I've had people from Ebbsfleet complaining about the amount of housing being built, which is a really good sign. I mean, it shows that they're actually buying into the place as a community, not just as a building development project. And people are like that. They move into a brand new place that has fields and then say we don't want any more brand new places. But that's absolutely fine. I mean, they're right to do it. That's the way Britain always works. I mean, you're absolutely fine to do that. And they're right. But I think it's working really well. And I just like to commend the team, everybody works on it. I think the people who, Kevin and everyone really just put stuff together. I think we're on a groove now, and I think it'd be very good that they can carry it on and take control now. So I think it's really, really good.
Well said, Jeremy. Yes, Valerie.
Just an idea. I don't know if it's viable again, really, but looking at the series of maps showing the green spaces, it reminded me of being on the board for the National Forest Company. They have a tool, it's basically digital mapping, and shows tree planting from inception over about 12 or so, even more now, years. And it is absolutely phenomenal. You see literally millions and millions of the landscape changing because of the minutes of trees planted. And I did wonder, I know we've got a wonderful model out the back, whether we can have a similar tool for Ebbsfleet, which shows not just the green spaces, but the housing as they come forward, the community spaces. I mean, literally, it would be transformational again, a really quick and easy tool to just demonstrate the vigour and the achievements.
What format would that tool take? What would it be?
I think we've got some.
Yeah, so we do have the green map, which we launched a couple of years
You
ago.
could have the housing, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and actually, well, we've been doing some work recently just to understand the CAD program that's behind the green map to see how we could use it for more sort of engagement events, because we were looking at how we could maybe map sort of public arts on there, community buildings on there. But yes, in terms of tracking development as well, I'll take that away. The CAD behind the green map currently isn't publicly accessible, but again, it's something that we've been talking to the IT people about. So
I'm sure the National Forest will tell you, I'm sure you can't recall, I'm afraid, but in a matter of minutes, you can see the evolution of the forest. It's really exciting, actually. You know, I think it would be similar here.
okay, I will take that away.
I think you can do it on Facebook though. People put pictures of things that used to be fields and say this is what it used to look like. So
You could do
You could leave it to them.
Google Earth as well, I think, but
All houses were new ones. Okay, great. Excellent progress again. Good work. I think this is for noting as well. So thanks very much, Ian. Caroline, marketing and communications.
I think Nick's got his hand up.
Oh, Nick. Sorry, Nick. There's
It's all right. Yeah, but what I was going to say is yeah, it doesn't need to delay you, and I've been trying to lower it.
got you. Sorry. Caroline.
Morning, everyone. I will just give you a whistle-stop tour of some of the key highlights that I take the paper as read. There's been a few points made with regards to the resident satisfaction survey, which we've been promoting across our socials. I think it's worth noting, based on your question to Ian, we're actually planning a summer campaign ahead of the launch of the 2025 resident satisfaction survey to follow up on what we've heard and what we've taken as action from residents' feedback. You said we did lessons learned and use that as a tool to encourage people to continue sharing their thoughts for the next resident satisfaction survey. So we're planning that for summer just to give us enough time to action meaningful change. And yeah, we'll be looking to promote that ahead of the next survey. I think this is a really exciting project that we've been working on recently, just because it's been a roaring success. We worked with a design agency to devise some creative assets for some wildlife walks that took place around Castle Hill Lakes. It was free to attend and it sold out in 24 hours. We kind of set up a ticketing website so that we could kind of help promote interest, and we were pleasantly surprised at how quick people were to kind of snap up their tickets. So we had a bat walk a couple of weeks ago now that took place in the evening. We got some wonderful photos, and then this weekend actually we've got a daytime environment nature walk. So far we've had really fantastic feedback from community members who were already chomping at the bit to have more events of the like. So that's something that hopefully we'll be able to continue moving forward into the summer. But it's just nice to have another kind of community event and initiative under our belt. And as part of that event, we promoted the Ebbsfleet Green Map, which we were just discussing, kind of showcasing all the natural infrastructure around Ebbsfleet. But that was just a great campaign that I think we were all really pleasantly shocked about how quick the tickets were sold out. Other press, we attended the Building New Communities Conference. Simon Harrison, Head of Design, sat on a panel, Health, Happiness and Exemplary Design. So it was really great for the corporation to be able to participate and sponsor that event. Alongside that, we also promoted a blog and Building New Communities Conference, showcased this thought leadership piece from Kevin around the benefits of utilising listening, digital engagement to take temperature tests and action kind of meaningful insights from residents. Aside from that, we're continuing with drone footage of the world and community buildings. I believe I linked in some of the shots for you to have a look at. We'll continue to capture that on a monthly basis and promote it with the ambition that once the buildings are open themselves, we'll kind of do a roundup of construction and the community coming together. Aside from that, as part of the Ebbsfleet Central project, we're now working on the key messaging, and they're supporting us to look at strategic opportunities to promote the Ebbsfleet Central project and the corporation. So really just taking stock of resident stakeholder sentiment. We're conducting an audit across all of our social media channels just to gauge sentiment around the corporation and the project. And with that, they're supporting us to devise a strategy for how we continue to kind of promote ourselves as a corporation and those key milestones within the Ebbsfleet Central project, which then I think leads me on nicely to a couple of upcoming press opportunities that we have. We've got the Telegraph visiting us next Wednesday. We pushed their visit back. I believe I covered it in the last board paper due to pre-election period, but they'll be interviewing Ian next Wednesday. We're also supporting some architects who worked on the countryside development. They're doing a PR piece around that neighbourhood and their involvement in the homes and the design of that neighbourhood. And included in the board paper, we featured in Construction News, so a feature article where the writer came down in January, sat down with Ian and interviewed them. So we're just, now that we're out of the pre-election period, continuing to kind of ramp up those strategic messaging opportunities and kind of share across our social website and in press. I'll leave it there. Any questions? Happy to take them.
Quick question. The electric buses, the introduction of those, are we going to do some? Yeah.
So
comments around those? Obviously, it happened during the election period.
Yes. Yeah. So we're just spreading it out. We have shared something on Fast Track a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to pace out the bus enthusiasm. So we've got some start scheduled next week.
All right. So it's probably quite impact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. Good. Board, any comments, observations? No.
It's a good report.
Yeah, as always, very good report. Just see whether or not Nick's going to put up his hand very late. No. All right. Good. That's
It was
for
a
noting there.
very solid report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well done.
Really got some good bat sites as well.
Yes. I can't take credit for any of the pictures. The community members got them all. Really positive.
They all came out after I'd left.
All right, well
But if you're the Batman, I don't want to make Simon.
done. After that, let's move on. All right, Mark, planning, design and delivery report.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, morning, everyone. So the usual update from me, a few things just to pick out. Development sites update. We had a helpful meeting with Dartford planners and housing team yesterday in relation to the Ebbsfleet Central East 106, and there's been some communication with KCC recently, so it feels so there's been some progress there, which is great. On Ashmere, we've recently started to have some conversations with a new developer. As this is part one, it's pre-app. I don't feel as I can probably say who that new developer is for Ashmere, but happy to tell board members confidence separately. So that's interesting, just to be working with a new house builder on a couple of different parcels across Ashmere. And there's an Abacus Corner public consultation happening later today. So Abacus Corner is being down just on the edge of Harbour Village, EDC land, Bellway to bring forward a scheme there. So there's some consultation events taking place in Ebbsfleet later. Housing delivery, yeah, so we're reporting 22 completions this month. So that's obviously to add to the end of the number. We are forecasting relatively high completion numbers in from Harbour Village in June. So I'm expecting the number to jump a little bit by the time we next meet in July. At the last board meeting, Nick, I think it was asking around the apartment market, and the affordable housing delivery. So Ian and I did go down to see Ebbsfleet just to have a bit of a chat with them around some of the sales down at Ashmere. We've also, as I mentioned, in 2.6, had a little bit of an update from one of the developers who are struggling to engage with an affordable housing provider on one of their particular parcels. So there's a couple of examples probably where affordable housing delivery is a little bit of a challenge. And there's also a couple of examples where apartment delivery is a challenge. The Croxton and Gowan scheme, Ebbsfleet Cross, another Bellway scheme, they do have some stock apartments there as well that we heard from them last week. Planning committee. So probably the headline point is we have the two new independent planning committee members, Ashley and Michelle, approved by the Secretary of State. So we've been starting to do some induction work with them. Michelle came to the first informal presentation that we had last week. So yeah, pleased to welcome them on board. One thing that I shockingly forgot to put in this report was just to note my thanks to Penny Marsh, who has been on the committee for 10 years. Yes, Neil has written to Penny separately. Penny was here for the first ever meeting of the EDC Planning Committee back in October 2015. So she's been involved in an awful lot of the key decisions. James McEnroy, who was also the KCC nominee. James attended a number of meetings more recently, but James has also stepped down at the last election, so he also be on the committee moving forward. So we expect to get KCC nominee. Housing mix. A couple of years ago, I sort of ran this exercise looking at market housing, affordable housing, flats, houses, bedrooms, and all of that stuff. On the back of the conversation we had at the last board meeting around the affordable housing percentage being lower this coming year, I wanted just to run through these numbers again to try to have a look at sort of where everything's at. These numbers are derived from the Planning Commission information that we already have in place, but also layering on areas where grant funding may have then flipped some market homes to affordable. So this probably gives us the sort of the most complete picture that we have at the moment. So that's based upon 6,307 homes. So yeah, a good split there between the market and affordable. So the affordable hitting that 30% target. Yeah, various different bits of data there in relation to showed ownership affordable rent. There's a few first homes at Ashmere that I think I probably reported on previously. We do continue to liaise with the borough councils around the housing products that come forward when the reserve matters when the reserve matters come through. 4.8, just a quick mention there about packaged living. So we're expecting the first homes of the Booty Brent products at 5B to be passed over probably in the next week or so. So that'll be interesting to see how they go. One thing that isn't on the paper, I had a duty to cooperate meeting with Gravesham yesterday. So they're looking to do Reg 19 for their local plan later in the year. So we're expecting to be consulted on that over the summer. And lastly, there's a few changes to the dashboard this month, just a little bit of presentation stuff primarily. And there is a section that says TBC, because similar to your comment earlier, Valerie, about understanding how tree planting and how the landscape changes. The thing that we haven't been necessarily capturing is that incremental overall delivery of open space. We obviously look at it in relation to KPIs and their business plans or sort of corporate plan chunks. I wanted to do a little bit more work just to understand what that cumulative picture looked like. So it says TBC, so we'll hopefully then have some more data in that section in July, and then be able to sort of feed in the open space as well as the homes and the non-residential floor space. One of the risks is decreasing, i.e. getting worse, which is the submission of valid applications and revised plans. It feels like there's just a little bit of a trend at the moment where it's a bit difficult to get some developers to be submitting plans quickly, to be submitting plans that we want to see. So just a few examples where it sort of feels that that's a little bit of a problem area, but hopefully it'll be a short-term blip. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, Marco. I have just a couple of questions from Neil, who's obviously at the planning inquiry, send his apologies. The first one is in 2.3, is the lack of starts a cause of concern? And in 2.6, how is the operation of cascade mechanisms likely to affect the delivery of on-site affordable housing? Will the operation of those mechanisms lead to a reduction in on-site affordable housing? So they're just two things that
great Neil questions then.
Yeah.
In terms of no further starts, it is a relatively short reporting period. The number of homes currently under construction is relatively stable, so I don't see the no further starts as an area for concern. We are expecting a reduced completion number this year in comparison to last. In terms of the cascade mechanisms, there's two permissions that have cascade allowances in them: the Eastern Quarry permission and then Harbour Village. They don't all allow that mechanism. At the moment,
Can you just describe how that operates, just so.
So, for example, at Eastern Quarry, there is an assumed tenure mix that they go out to then get some providers for. There is a way they can then deviate from that if they then don't hit price points, and then if they then don't hit that again, they can actually then cascade down all the way down to then providing the financial contribution to either the EDC or the Borough Council for then affordable housing to be delivered in the wider area. Gratians is a slightly tighter mechanism where they can't elect to do all of the levels. They can elect to maybe do stages 1 and 2, and then if they then go on to stages 3 and 4, it then has to be agreed by the Borough Council. So as ever with Ebbsfleet planning commissions, there isn't the same scenario in every case. The cascades haven't been used so far, but there is obviously a risk that might lead to housing delivery either being reduced or the levels between a shared ownership and affordable rent changing. We'll obviously keep an eye on that and feed that into the data as and when we're notified.
Thank you, Bob. Nick, board generally, but Nick, I can see you've got a question first.
So, Mark, in the apartment sale issue that you referenced, have you had any feedback that shared ownership in particular is a problem?
The apartment examples I think that were given where there were challenges, they were certainly market apartments, I believe on Ashmere. They've reached out to different registered providers and potentially sort of a PRS type operators to see what the options are. On the Ashmere example, I don't think there is a link between shared ownership and apartments. On the other example I gave, the Ebbsfleet Cross, the Croxton and Gary one, there are potentially up to 50 apartments that haven't been sold. Those are stock units. I think that they are a mix of shared ownership and markets.
And have you had an approach to vary the tenure on the shared ownership?
Not currently. We will wait to see if developers come back to us with that, but no, we haven't done yet.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, Valerie.
Similar to Nick's question, actually, I was thinking circuit pieces of history and differences in selling apartments. We've just seen a So planning committee just seen a presentation on another scheme that's coming forward, which was majority apartments, wasn't it? Roughly 2/3, 1/3. And it begs the question whether that's viable as well for obvious reasons. Can we commission some research or to get a better understanding ourselves as the EDC?
I mean, I think that that is the question that I've asked the developers, because interestingly, at Ashmere, we have started to have pre-application discussions on the fourth phase. And they do have apartments there as well as homes. Obviously, yeah, as a committee sort of scheme last week, that scheme's the applicant's corner scheme is out to public consultation this afternoon. Yeah, and I think that we obviously have continued to sort of question the developers. I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily our role to sort of be inquiring in terms
I
of
don't mean as a planning commission, I mean as an EDC.
I suppose the point will be they're the private sector operator. They should make their commercial business decisions based upon their expertise, not ours to try.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the mystery model, from what I understand, is to be having a 50% pre-sold. So they would then, in future phases, I assume they'd be, as well as looking at their section 106 and forth, but they would be then looking at having additional affordable and then potentially then some sort of private rented options as well. So yes, I think that it's right to inquire. Don't want to be wanting permissions that aren't going to get built or they're going to get built and be empty. But yeah, I think that's probably the best role for us to have.
So, I mean, I would agree with your sentiment there that, I mean, they'll be quick enough to tell us if they want to change product. I think we have been surprised, and Mark has told me about that particular application, simply because they have been telling us they've got stock units, but sometimes they've maybe got a strategy in the background or some approach that they're going to take. They haven't probably quite told us about. Maybe they've got a buyer like that, but we don't know. But they are very quick to tell us, and they will be exploring all sorts of angles. I think where the research will come in for us, will be, for example, where we're bringing forward Ebbsfleet Central, where we don't want to take box to the market. We'll get planning conditions that are not then going to be viable. So we've definitely been in a position there where we understand the demand. And anecdotally, history says to Mark and I that there are buyers coming through the doors for the apartments, but they don't meet the affordability criteria, so they wouldn't be able to go. A deposit for sufficient Help to Buy clearly is the loss of that has made a big difference. I think the sector as a whole became probably overly dependent on it, in my view. It's got a bit baked into the market, and now that's not there. That's had quite an effect on what we find particular. Definitely no suggestion, Nick, following up your question, that it's any specifically to do with shared ownership.
Okay.
Don't get that message back.
I mean, what we're seeing in London is that the investment market has gone for one beds, and people looking at these, 50-meter apartments or smaller are saying no, thank you for their owner occupation. So developers getting left with a lot of one beds, which 5 years ago they'd have knocked out the easiest to overseas to investors.
Yeah. Yes, Simon.
So just
But sorry, just to finish. But then the other point was that we're seeing from RPs that they have absolutely no interest in shared ownership. They just don't want the sales risk, and of course the rents are far too high, so the numbers are no longer adding up. People just cannot afford to pay the gap by way of rent.
We're not. As I said, we haven't seen that phenomena here so far. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. We just haven't heard that evidence yet in Ebbsfleet. It's quite a different market. I suspect.
Well, there's always point. There are also household salary cap limits, aren't there, on those products?
Yep.
And some would assert that those are too low. So the government would be well advised to increase those, particularly for markets like London, in order to free up that market somewhat. Their idea of what is affordable is not necessarily what it's called. John, good to see you.
Sorry.
All right, Nick, thank you. Simon, you were going to come in then, Jeremy.
Yeah, just the Ebbsfleet Central East and section 106 agreements. Yeah. Clearly there's 3 agreements we've got to get on operation when we're there, and then with King County Council, presume.
Yes.
Are we getting traction with all 3 of those now? Are we making progress on all 3? Because clearly getting that planning permission issue is key to moving forward as well.
If I had to put them in like a rank,
Yeah.
I think that probably there's probably more traction with Dartford based upon the meeting that we had yesterday.
Right.
We've had some good stuff from KCC recently. Jenny, you might know operation.
I think that the lawyers are now starting to work on it.
So it does feel as though everything's moving. The KCC document is probably the more complicated document. There are more contributions. There's generally just more content in the KCC document. So there is some traction, and we are raising it with everyone. So yes, yeah, it has been slow, but the last sort of 3 weeks it has felt.
Jeremy.
Yes, just anecdotally, I'm hearing that the government are getting increasingly concerned about the widening a gap between their expectations getting to 1.5 million at the end of the term. I won't use the P word, panic, but I'm told that things are getting fairly heated with ministers about how to deal with that. And I think what will happen is that we'll see more directions to developers based upon new applications and new sites. I think the government will probably try and assist more through the planning controls with new sites, bringing some planning regulations that favour developers as they promised to do, out of not surprise. But I think there might be an attachment of directions about speed and velocity into those, which we haven't really had before. It's always been totally commercial, what you build when you want. I'm just thinking in terms of our velocity of starts. My understanding is the government will try to measure applications and planned permissions by the end of the term period rather than houses, which is up to them, I suppose. But I do think that might put some pressure on developers that we're operating, particularly the larger ones, who will simply find themselves being dragged elsewhere to build because they've been told to. So I think it's one of those things we're going to monitor and watch. Clearly, we want our area to grow at the right pace anyway, don't we? We don't want it too fast or too slow. We want it to grow just right. So, not necessarily a bad thing, but I think our velocity might come up, but it's probably only marginal, but it might come up a little bit.
Right. It's good to know. Any other comments on this? Steady progress, obviously, swirling market forces and drivers to the market generally. Significant number of which are out of our control, but certainly within the agreement of what the government would do. So I'm sure they'll be pressing all the buttons they possibly can do. All right, Mark, thank you very much indeed. That's great. That's for noting. Kevin, Ebbsfleet Living.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
As usual, I'll take the paper as read, but I just wanted to pull out a few highlights this month, particularly as we're at the year end of a few of our programs, to just to sort of give a few summaries of those. First of all, on the Ebbsfleet Community Board, just thanks to Jeremy for his encouraging words in that. I think you've been encouraged, Jeremy, to know that we now have 20 resident members. So the first meeting of the Refresh group was on the 22nd of April. That was following a recruitment campaign by the members themselves. And encouragingly, the first meeting saw them all break into subgroups where they were trying to actually take on tasks outside the normal meetings to do targeted bits of work. So again, we'll keep you informed of what emerges from that as we progress, but a really encouraging first meeting of that refreshed group. Also to highlight, it was the end of the 2-year program for the Garden City Trust Community Fund. At the end of the 2-year program, they'd given 38 grants totaling just under £35,000 for the community, which again was encouraging. And the last meeting had 13 successful applicants, so you can see a trend towards much more applications and more successful applicants through that fund. The majority of the paper, again, really encouragingly this month, is by the community. So a whole range of events and activities, including Collie, Easter, all delivered by the community themselves. The Ebbsfleet Events Committee doing an Easter market for the first time. Again, a very positive trend, seeing the community doing things for themselves. Some with small bits of seed funding from the community fund, but others doing it without any funding at all, which was really encouraging. Again, happy to announce that the Salvation Army have secured their full amount of £200,000 for the mobile community space. You'll recall that the EDC board approved a 25% contribution to that last year on the condition they could find the rest of the money themselves. They have found that money and the vehicle is now ordered. So again, we'll look forward to seeing that later in the year coming forward. And again, as Ian mentioned earlier, our inclusive growth work has been a really successful bit of what we're doing. At the end of the 24-25 programme, encouragingly, we saw the education outreach programme reach over 2,000 students in 12 schools across Dartford. The employability programme brought 9 people directly into employment from the course itself, 7 of which went directly to Halman O'Brien. And again, we've just launched a new career service for young people locally, again, using a young entrepreneurial company called Young Mambas from Northfleet, who are giving tailored career service to people locally. 24 people signed up for that, and encouragingly, all 24 people turned up, which really shows the value that course was bringing. I really finally just sort of to reflect on some of the things we did see in the resident satisfaction survey. Some of the areas we highlighted as needing more work were encouraging more volunteering, and there was lack of physical activity. You'll see in the paper that we've pleased to announce this month that there's a specific Ebbsfleet page on the Everyday Active Kent and Medway page, and a local volunteer has taken that on board himself and is running that himself on behalf of the community to try and encourage more physical activity across the local area. So again, Earth Arts is a good example of the kind of things we're trying to encourage locally.
Right, good. All right, board, any observations, comments? Yes, Simon.
So, great to see the young people's design group and the work they were doing over the Easter holidays. Have you identified a location that they can install the equipment that they were working on? Or
That's a very good question. It was done as a sort of theoretical exercise, but it was so successful and they're so enthused that we are seeking a site to deliver it on. We have a preferred site, and we're just trying to deal with some health and safety issues and to see if that's achievable.
Okay, brilliant. And the other question was around, well, just really pleased to see the work with the Lawn Tennis Association. That's really positive in terms of, you know, building on sort of healthy new towns and getting people engaged with that. And the Cycle UK again, we're submitting that grant application. When would we hear around?
We've been successful in that, so we
We've
are.
been successful in that as well.
We are going to do that, and if we already have it within our own program, if it wasn't successful, we would fund it directly ourselves, because we did it last year with grants. It's so successful. It's a targeted number of, you can only do a certain number of people per day, but it doesn't mean that that person's then going to be cycling for the whole year. So again, we really see that as an area we want to focus on moving forward this year. So.
And it's great that, you know, the lawn tennis, you've got these, they're led by local activators who are sort of local residents. So it's, you know, securing long-term commitment to that type of activity as well. Right.
Again, that first one was on Sunday, so that again has started. So I'm giving all next month's content away, but yeah, that did start on Sunday, and again was really successful. And again, as I said, it's these local volunteers, these local activators that are really encouraging to see moving forward.
All right, good. Yes, Valerie.
Just ask about the employability project, which looks absolutely fantastic. I've got 16 local people and 9 secure jobs. I did wonder whether we could count this towards our employability tally, but setting that aside, is there more that we can do? So a similar practice, because that's extraordinary, isn't it? And I know there's a mind self-interest because they were essentially employed by the guys that were organising the training themselves, but it really is remarkable. 9 out of 16 to go straight into jobs is an absolute win, isn't it? Can we do more?
Yeah, so again, giving everything away for the next one, I'm pleased to say we've already signed an agreement with Hunter O'Brien to do another series of courses next year. We've set a minimum target of 25 this year to take forward. I mean, again, it's quite an intensive course, so it's quite expensive per head for us to get that through. But again, we can see results of people actually really getting into jobs. And specifically what we're doing this year is we're only looking at the people who are not currently covered under other programs. So there are programs that exist for younger people, but we're specifically targeting older people who are not covered within the younger group that's got funding within it.
Good. Excellent. Question from me, wasn't it? Came from the station. There's some edible Ebbsfleet boxes there, yeah, which doesn't look very edible. I'm just wondering whether who's responsible for those?
Yeah, that's really good. We do have 14 very successful edible Ebbsfleet locations across the area.
Yeah.
The one that is unsuccessful is the station. We have there used to be a lot next to Car Park C,
Yeah.
which we've now moved to local schools.
Yeah.
And they're doing those. The only remaining one is outside from station. There's been a succession of changes of managers in the station. So they have said they would like to keep one and they wanted to try and encourage their staff to use it. It hasn't materialized. So I think in some respects we'll probably try and move that one as well.
Yeah, look, I think it just doesn't, you don't get here and think, wow, it's really happening here with edible Ebbsfleet.
So it's the station. So the station really one hasn't been successful. It's been more because there's been a lot of turnaround in staff.
Right.
And then just getting this, because we don't want to plant it. The whole point is for the staff to take ownership of it, which they haven't. So if they haven't, we'll just move.
Let's find someone who wants to give it love, move it to a new lovely place, perhaps. All right. Great. All right. Any other comments?
I think it's the wrong kind of leaves in the box, that's what it is.
Really? Yes.
I could have bought some spare tomato plants down as well. I can go through.
As Kim. It's an idea. The board can be responsible. Step forward there, Simon. Anyway, small point, but anyway. I think great work as always. Well done. Yeah, thank you very much. That's for noting. Very much. Gerard, Finance Operations and Programme Report.
Thank you, Chair. As you're probably aware, our financial year runs to the end of March. So the paper in front of you is to inform of the 24-25 outturn position and of the indicative budget for 25-26. Normally at this stage, we'd be asking you for approval of the current year's budget. However, we haven't yet had formal approval from the Ministry of our 25-26 allocation. They have just very recently announced that we should be getting that very soon, and it is in line with the numbers that we are showing you on this report. So that's very positive news. So for 24-25, in terms of our revenue spend, the details are at Annex A. We spent gross spend of about 7.3 million. All of these numbers are subject to audit. And on the capital CDEL side, we are saying an outturn position of just 14.4 million. And that's slightly lower than we only informed the board of previously. The details and the explanation of a couple of projects that got some reduced spend are at section 3.4. And for 25-26, we're looking to spend on revenue on the RDEL 7.5 million gross spend and of capital of 28 million. So quite an increase compared to previous years, but that's details shown in the paper. And there was an action from a previous board paper. So section 11 gives the response to that board action, which is just around our amount of spend on works below 50k, and to date there haven't been any. So happy to take any questions.
So the department, just to be CDEL, which we're projecting will be down to 28.11, 37.49. We're not amending that now, but the department are giving us verbal comfort around that number, are they? That's correct. Yeah.
I would say we've had it in writing from our sponsor director. We just haven't had the formal delegation letter.
Right.
Which is what we June, but that's the thing I think that Gerard has mentioned that we ought to be getting fairly soon.
So when that pops up, you'll let.
Yeah, and then
Right.
we can finalise the business plan, etc. And those
Okay, all right,
bits and pieces that are dependent.
excellent, good. All right, board, other comments, observations?
Just sorry,
Yes,
just an
John.
observation on, I did notice here on the security, I have forgot to mention it before. But it'd be worthwhile checking the fences around, Blue Lake. I was going to the last Ebbsfleet home game, wasn't a great game to Frank. But I saw 3 or 4 young people climbing through the fence. So it'd be worthwhile checking the
Thanks, John.
integrity of it there.
We have had some recent, obviously with the nicer weather, that encourages people, the security people are on high alert. We have escorted 4 or 5 teenagers off site who are all well equipped with swimming trunks and towels. Yes, but we are constantly monitoring the fence, escorting people off, calling the police as and when. We haven't put a dog unit in there to date. Obviously, with the nice weather coming, that's obviously an option that we can utilise. Obviously, that's a cost, but obviously health and safety is our key concern. Sadly, a youngster did die in Nottingham the other day. Deep water, got into trouble. So yeah, we are doing everything possible to try and keep people out. It is a dangerous site.
Gerard, is there deep water shock type signs around there? Remind.
There are a lot of signage. We have put signage up. Unfortunately, as part of the trespass, they do remove the signs as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're young, you're immortal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of our members of staff reported a similar thing that you saw, John. If it was the same people, it might have been a different incident. But yeah, I mean, if anybody does see anything, reach out, let us know. But we tend to get feedback too. It's a constant.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that report is for noting. I think it's duly noted. That, yes,
Sorry, Simon, if I may just referring to that last point. So, Gerard, in paragraph 11, you'll all remember that we increased the delegation whilst we increased.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to board ask for that particular report to come back. So I suppose just in the board, on the basis of that, satisfied that delegation remains the delegate works. So I think we said at the time it doesn't give you very.
All right. Right, so that's the noting board. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Ian. All right, good. Thank you, Gerald. Jen, is this you?
Yes, and then I think if there's any questions on Paul, obviously he's not able to speak with us today.
Yeah.
But I think it was, yeah, as ever, I will take it as read. And just a couple of bits to note really was just the work detailed at 3.2 on Ebbsfleet Central that we are doing to just review our infrastructure scope of works to make sure that is deliverable in phases or as a whole, pending the outcome of the second stage of the spending review process.
So just on that.
Yeah.
I received a Google alert from Construction News this morning.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
which was saying, based on information that we have put into public domain
Indeed.
about us going to commence in May, procurement for infrastructure works.
Yeah.
So just want to let the board know what all that is.
Yeah, so that's the start of what is quite a long process to procure our contractors for the scheme, and it's a 2-stage process. This is stage 1, within which there are 3 stages itself. So what's starting in May is a very sort of early market engagement.
Yeah. Formal
Market engagement where we'll be hosting sessions where potentially interested contractors can come and hear a bit more of a briefing about the project before just submitting an expression of interest. And then later in the summer, we'll go through what's called an invitation to participate. It's what in old money would be called like a pre-qualification before we select and then go forward to the invitation to tender, which will be in the autumn itself, with the intention of having a preferred contractors, because we're looking at various lots in sort of end of Q1 next year.
Right.
And then we'll go into what's called a pre-construction services agreement, where we finalise the design with those preferred contractors for agreeing costs, which then form part of our full business case for onward construction. But we know we are in a position to be able to do that. We're going to clearly explain through that process that what we might design up as an entire infrastructure package, we may only deliver it in phases, subject to the funding. But we've satisfied ourselves that we can start that now in a transparent way that then allows the project to maintain programme whilst we're just understanding how to flex those infrastructure items.
And if there were fundamental changes in what we would see as part of the spending bid, then that's a process that
we can flex with
modify,
exactly.
change.
It's very early days.
It's just notifying the market that we want to start having a material conversation about, and an exciting piece of work that's coming up. But I'm very pleased the team will be delighted to hear that it's all finally landed this morning.
Yeah.
And the other thing from the elements from the development side was just to note the progress down at Ebbsfleet Green, with another image there of the Weldon Wellbeing Pavilion, but everything's progressing as planned at the moment. And the Weldon Heart, not the image shown in figure 1, but the other building nearer the school, the smaller of the two, we are still on track for that to sort of open towards the end of the summer, early autumn, and I know the trust are gearing up in preparation for that as well.
When will that be complete?
End of the summer. So yeah, it should be sort of end of August time.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Great, good. All right,
And then any other questions on the other elements, I will attempt to help answer.
all right. Board, any other comments, observations? Nick?
Hi. Jennifer, on North East Embankment East, the instruction to the consultant is, seems to me like two-stage, that they're currently reviewing the baseline information that you already have, and then they're going to advise additional investigations that might need to be made. Sounds quite sort of macro value engineering. Have you given them a sense of the envelope of what sort of saving that you're targeting?
We haven't approached it in that way, Nick. We try to get them to do a comprehensive understanding of the information, because we were concerned that some of the allowances in the original cost plan were potentially unduly high, as they were not based on detailed information. So it's approaching it about filling all the gaps in our understanding about the ground conditions, so that the cost analysis that will follow can be done on a full suite of information, as opposed to the reverse of targeting a saving. We were trying to make sure that the number that we have got, we are assured about, whereas at the moment we aren't assured about the information it's been based on.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Board, I think that report as well is for noting. Thank you very much, Jen, for that. We received, as always, a good set of questions from the public, where our responses will be published on our website. So I think that concludes the part 1 part of this meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Very welcome, and thank you very much. Right, why don't we just